Hey everyone, welcome back to the Critic-Verse. Today we're continuing with our recap and review of Power Book 4 Force with Season 2 Episode 5 titled Crown Vic. Now, before we get to the recap, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow along with each recap and review. Also, keep updated on all things Critic-Verse and help me reach my current goal of 500 subscribers. And if you haven't seen the episode, spoiler warnings as we are recapping before we get to the review. Now, once again, this episode is titled Crown Vic, and this title could be in reference to a number of things in the episode. First off, that being Vic Flynn, as he's planning with Claudia to kill their father, and the plan changing on him and the effect it has on him, and the direction he's being sent on afterwards. The title also refers to the moment when Jenard hits rock bottom after an entire episode of making bad decisions one after another and making one bad one in a Crown Vic of all things. The episode begins where the last one ended after D-Mac is freaking out after Tommy reveals he shot a cop, and Tommy tells him he'll handle it and tells D-Mac to stay in the house. Jenard's remaining guys press him that they need more product and Miguel is no longer fucking with him. Jenard and a lot of the other connects aren't really messing with him either, but Jenard says he'll figure it out and pleads with his remaining guys to stay loyal. Next, Diamond is at his favorite diner and the server informs him someone named Big Sid is dying. And this has an effect on Diamond, but he says he doesn't really mess with Big Sid. And then two members of a rival gang pull up and start shooting, injuring a woman. At Tillman Hospital, a fellow nurse is venting to Maria, but she's too distracted texting Tommy. But just then, the victim from the diner shooting comes in. Next, head back to the barbershop and Tommy is wondering why there's an increased police presence and Diamond informs him on the attempt that just happened on his life. Also tells him some of Jenard's guys switched to a rival gang, the RDs, and he used to be cellmates with the leader of the RDs and he can set up a parlay to talk peace between the two. Diamond then questions Tommy about the D-Mac situation and then points out the fact that D-Mac is outside, talking to a cop no less. Next, cut to Tommy's house, which you're already seeing Tommy manhandle D-Mac at home, and JP comes to his son's rescue, asking what's going on, but Tommy tells him it's better that he doesn't know and to keep D-Mac inside, and JP agrees. Vic and Claudia go over their plan before Vic is picked up by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Next, we see Vic in an interrogation room being questioned by the Asian U.S. Attorney and Detective DeFranco for the murders of the DJ from last season. But Stacy says to let him go because she believes he's the key to bringing down Tommy, and that Tommy is the linchpin to bringing down all the other gangs. To which DeFranco notes that she's putting her career above right and wrong. Kate tries to bond with D-Mac, and they talk about the girl D-Mac had to stand up, but he fails to mention why he stood her up in the first place. And Kate gives him an excuse to leave the house, unfortunately. Next, we see Jenard pull up to a neighborhood he doesn't actually have control over anymore, given the fact that Big Smurf reacts to him and tells him that this isn't his neighborhood. He looks jumpy, and then he goes and robs another dealer for their stash and also takes their chain, which is an important detail for later. He comes back to his boys claiming special delivery and that he's back and that the bricks he just gave them were from Miguel. But one of the guys recognizes Manny's chain, the person he stole it from, but Jenard rejects that, claiming that the chain is his. But his guy is still suspicious on that. Vic finally makes it to Claudia's place, and Doyle introduces them to Big Red, another hitman from Dublin who claims to be worse than the Four Horsemen, and that he's the Apocalypse. Which, if you remember, the Four Horsemen were kind of a letdown, and I have a feeling that he'll be too. The plan is for Vic to occupy their father until 9 o'clock, and then the team will move in. And they note that Vic has to be out the house because they'll kill anyone that's there. And also, Vic notes that Paulie won't be there because Dad fired him, which gives Claudia even more fuel. At Southville Prison, Diamond's CO girl delivers a phone to the head of the RDs, King Kilo. And once he calls Diamond, Diamond proposes making their coalition dream a reality to end the bloodshed. And he's in, but he wants half the business in the joint, to which Tommy rejects it and ends the call. Maria mourns the loss of the victim, and then her doctor Flynn shuts down her grieving, saying that they've got other patients and that she has to grow up. She calls him out on that, and they essentially break up. But this argument spills out onto the streets as he follows Maria outside, and unfortunately for him, it's actually in front of Miguel, since he's waiting to pick Maria up and putting hands on his little sister, and that's a no-no. As Miguel sees Dr. Kendall get a little physical with Maria, but she gets in his car and pleads with Miguel to just leave, even though he gets out and he wants to talk to Dr. Kendall. Next, Doyle wants to sleep with Claudia, who is barely feigning interest, but gives in. And unfortunately, the sex scene is, well, fortunately for some, the sex scene is over before it barely began. Doyle asks, and Claudia talks about her taking over the Flynn business, and Doyle points out that that isn't going to happen since Dublin is still old school, and as long as Vic's alive, Claudia will never be queen. Back at the barbershop, the old-timer is the second person to tell Diamond about this Big Sid and that he's in hospice. And when he rejects the news, the old-timer says he and Big Sid go way back, and he should go say his final words before it's too late. Diamond goes to see Big Sid, who doesn't seem pleased to see him. He then asks about Jenard, and it's revealed Big Sid is his father. Surprise, surprise. And there's a lot of bad blood between the two, and Big Sid points out that he thinks Diamond always thought that he was above everyone else, and that it's actually his fault Jenard is in the game and Diamond is nothing more than a glorified corner boy. And all this arguing does is just exasperate Sid's condition, calling to nurses to come to his room, but yelling to Diamond to get out. Afterwards, Doyle tells Claudia that the timeline is being moved up due to the weather, and that the attack will come at 8:30, and that she should tell Vic to get out early. Next, at the Flynn estate, Vic gets there and finds out Paulie is joining them. And unceremoniously, Walter forgave Paulie off screen. When he tells Claudia, she doesn't warn him about the new timeline and keeps everything as same. Tommy yelling for Kate only to find JP, who he finally informs of what D-Mac did. And Tommy tells JP he'll handle it and sends a text to Big Smurf after JP blames Tommy for this. At the Flynn estate, dinner is going well until the hit starts, surprising Vic because it's earlier than he thought. Walter sees through the security cameras that it's Dublin, and he and Paulie gear up. Vic tries to convince Paulie to leave Walter to his own devices, but Paulie is just too loyal. Then we get to see Paulie head out, and either Paulie is such a badass or these Dublin guys are trash, because Paulie takes out 3 guys before Big Red finally puts him down. Big Red spots Vic, and he believes for a second it's a trap, and Walter comes out with the shotgun and takes down 2 more guys before killing Big Red. And after seeing what happened to Paulie, Walter blames Claudia, but Vic blames Walter, saying that this is all on him. And after, Walter berates Vic, saying that at least Claudia had heart, Vic shoots him in the back. He tells him that he planned this with Claudia, and after some last words from Walter, Vic shoots him in the eye, and I kind of chuckled at this moment. It might be something says more about me than the show. Jenard goes to get some drugs for personal use and ends up exchanging the chain he stole that episode for said drugs. And in the guy's Crown Vic, he shoots up because the guy tells him it's more efficient than snorting. Afterwards, Miguel pays Dr. Kendall a visit, and he confuses this as a robbery and offers him his watch. Miguel, being insulted, tells him to put his hands on the table and proceeds to smash both his hands with one of his surgery awards, and probably guarantees he'll never get one of those awards again. As D-Mac goes to approach Genesis, Big Smurf essentially kidnaps D-Mac after he pulls up on him in a van. And it's actually under Tommy's orders, and JP knows about this. And Tommy advises JP not to tell Kate, and even borderline threatens him. Claudia and Doyle are worried when they haven't heard back from Big Red until Vic comes up in the elevator. And Claudia shoots Doyle after feigning ignorance, but Vic isn't buying any of it at this point. Diamond has a heart-to-heart with his father, Sid, and Sid says he was always jealous of how strong Diamond was, and that Diamond didn't need him, but Jenard wasn't as strong as Diamond, and also asked Diamond to watch over Jenard as he slowly passes away. Tommy tells Diamond he handled the D-Mac situation and he's gone, but also tells Diamond to accept King Kilo's terms and to get the coalition going, but they'll supply the drugs, keeping some part under their control. Kate is worried about D-Mac, and Tommy tells her D-Mac is gone and he ain't coming back, insinuating he killed him and that JP knew, putting Kate in a moment of weakness later on. Jenard finally goes to see Big Sid, but finds out that he's too late. And after Diamond lies about Big Sid's last words, Jenard breaks down and Diamond offers him back into CBI. And surprise, surprise, it's revealed D-Mac isn't dead, but Tommy had him taken and sent to a work academy / school until Tommy tells him he can come back. The final scene is Vic going to the U.S. Attorney's office speaking to Stacy, and that he wants a new life in WITSEC in exchange for giving her Claudia. But Stacy says that's actually just the first part, and she wants Vic to infiltrate CBI and give her Tommy Egan. To which Vic agrees. End of episode. Well, this was probably the deadliest episode of Force so far. And I gotta say, I think 2 important characters die and 1 semi-important character also goes away. And it's kind of funny how, I think last week's video or the week before, I talked about how the show felt bloated with too many characters. And it seems that the show gets rid of 4 of their at least recurring characters so like halfway through the season. Like Walter's gone, which really took me by surprise. Paulie I thought was going to die last week. Doyle, I didn't know if he was going to die at all, and then they sent D-Mac away, and who knows when he could be coming back. But hey, he does have a chance of returning, but we'll see, seeing as we're at the midpoint of the season. And I'm glad all the fighting between CBI and Treason is kind of done with, but bringing back Jenard into CBI also comes with its own problems, because they're absorbing all the problems he amassed up until now. Like his recent ripping off of other dealers, Miguel and the Serbs having beef with him owing them all money. And it just doesn't seem like a good idea to take him back, but it also seems like they're cutting like a lot of the conflict short to like create a central conflict in the show. I get why they didn't tell Kate what they did with D-Mac, but they hid it from the audience even though we probably all saw it coming. Also, the same thing as the Big Sid reveal. They made it pretty obvious Big Sid was his dad, given that they just talked about how his dad was his reason for boxing in the last episode, and then this episode they started talking about Big Sid. I gotta say, Claudia is very irritating. Like how she easily was gonna set Vic up to die because Dublin didn't want a woman in charge, and then overacted when Vic actually survived the whole ordeal, but then she couldn't see that Vic obviously knows the truth. And a lot of this episode was actually children confronting their parents. In this episode, Diamond confronts Big Sid, Vic confronts Walter before he kills him, and then after Kate blames herself for raising monsters, JP states that Kate didn't raise them, they kind of raised themselves, and that's why they're like this. But I'm a little upset at Vic's direction and how he became a snitch in this episode because he wants his sister to suffer, but could have just told Tommy that she killed Liliana, because in the next episode it seems like he does tell her, and then Tommy says to Vic that he'll make her suffer. But hey, those are my thoughts on this episode. Do you think D-Mac is coming back before the end of the season? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for joining me in the Critic-Verse. See you next time.